Hi, my name is Scott McQueen, and in this presentation, I will be going over the sensitivity analysis. To start things off, I'll go over what a sensitivity analysis is, the types of sensitivity analyses there are, and some uses for the sensitivity analysis. Next, I'll go over the qualitative steps needed to conduct a sensitivity analysis. Third, I will outline the quantitative steps needed for a sensitivity analysis. And finally, I will discuss how to use a sensitivity analysis to incorporate risk into capital budgeting. According to Will Kenton with Investopedia, a sensitivity analysis is a study to determine how distinct values of an independent variable influence a given dependent variable. I know this definition sounds a bit vague now, but I will get into some examples later in this presentation. Tim Vipond with the Corporate Financial Institute breaks down the purpose of sensitivity analyses into three categories: valuation analysis, business planning, and model testing. Each of these categories allows you to draw a different conclusion and gain different bits of insight based on what you're researching. Sensitivity analysis for valuation analysis can help you assess the impact of a project as assumptions change. For business planning, it helps you determine cash flow and funding requirements. And for model testing, it can help test a model's functionality, such as if the model is behaving as intended. For this presentation, we'll focus on sensitivity analysis for business planning, as this typically involves a specific type of sensitivity analysis called the what-if analysis. The what-if analysis is very commonly used across the financial industry. In addition to the previous uses mentioned, sensitivity analysis can also be used to incorporate risk into capital budgeting, which we'll discuss at the end of this presentation. It's important to note that the actual sensitivity analysis tends to be performed at the end of financial modeling, after all qualitative and quantitative research for a project has been completed. While the qualitative and quantitative data gathered can be used for your sensitivity analysis, it can also be used for various other tools. But we'll circle back to the sensitivity analysis and discuss the qualitative steps that you must complete first. First qualitative step is to build your business case. This involves formulating an idea for a project and making fundamental assumptions about that project. You won't necessarily have data to back your assumptions up at this point, but they still need to be educated guesses based on your current understanding of the firm and its needs. In step 2, you'll perform a qualitative business case review. While you obviously want to review the business case in more depth for your own sake, this review is more about getting buy-in from relevant stakeholders. Stakeholders are anyone affected by the business decision of whether to take on a project or not. For a new product potentially going to market, this could include marketing and sales teams. For a new software to improve inventory management, it could be IT and operations teams. When determining stakeholders, it's best to be as inclusive as possible. A decision made without key stakeholder input could have significant consequences. The third step is to transition from assumptions to facts. This is where you begin taking any preliminary research and begin searching for sources of information and the tools needed to quantify your assumptions. This could mean going to the finance department and requesting forecasts of sales or revenue. It could mean going to IT or an analytics department and requesting productivity rates. It could mean doing open source research on tax rates or competitors. Whatever source is necessary to achieve a quantified value of your assumptions. Any assumptions without some sort of number behind them cannot be measured in the sensitivity analysis. Now that you have a business case with a financial model and data, we'll discuss the quantitative steps of the sensitivity analysis where you put your data into action. In the first quantitative step of your sensitivity analysis, you will pick an independent variable or variables to examine. Use the data from your previous research to determine an input value for the variable. For example, say you research the firm's revenue growth and have assumed that revenue will grow 10% over the next year. Your input value for revenue growth could be 10%, or it could be a dollar amount depending on your research and preferences. Next, pick a sensitivity range to apply to that value. A sensitivity range is basically a reasonable range under and over the value you assumed. For example, if you assumed revenue growth would be 10%, a reasonable sensitivity range might be plus or minus 2% of that value. Third, you need to select a dependent variable or variables to examine against the independent variable. For example, you might want to look at share price. Continuing with our previous independent variable example of revenue growth, your sensitivity analysis will essentially answer the question, what effect will revenue growth between 8 and 12% have on share price? Outputs from the analysis will show share price at various specified points between 8 and 12% revenue growth. Finally, you need to link the data you have to whatever financial analysis tool you're using. Common tools include Microsoft Excel, MATLAB, and Simulink. After linking the data, you will have completed the quantitative steps of your analysis. Next, you will review the findings and use them to incorporate risk into your capital budgeting. Sensitivity analyses can help determine how sensitive a project's value or cash flow is in relation to specified variables. Common variables used to determine risk for capital budgeting purposes are sales, investments, tax rate, and cost of sales. If a project is sensitive to any of those variables, it may be considered risky, and further research may be needed to determine if the project is worth taking. In closing, sensitivity analyses are important and powerful tools for decision makers, but they aren't the only tools out there. Leverage the research you conducted and the data you gathered to incorporate other capital budgeting tools such as payback period, net present value, and internal rate of return. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day.